Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Level Up My Life podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about the current round of therapy that I'm in and all the important lessons I've learned. In this episode, I will be talking about trauma, how I've healed, and what I do to help myself through the tough times. Let's get into it. This time around, starting in the summer of 2023, I sought out therapy yet again because I recognized that there were still a ton of underlying factors that were continuing to negatively impact my daily life. I wasn't sure what they were or why they were popping up, but I knew that I needed help. Not long after starting therapy, my therapist suggested I consider doing trauma therapy. I was resistant at first because I was convinced that I didn't have trauma. Back then, when I thought about trauma, I always thought about capital T trauma, like being a refugee from a war-torn country, surviving a violent crime, or something comparably dramatic. I didn't know that something comparably less severe, like non-physical childhood bullying or an early disability diagnosis, could also count as trauma. Eventually, I decided to give trauma therapy a shot. The type of therapy I did was called EMDR, where you experience bilateral stimulation of the brain while holding in mind a traumatic target memory. This helps your brain to reprocess the traumatic memory or event in a healthier way, thus reducing distress. I will say that trauma therapy is hard, exhausting work. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and explore the traumatic event or memory again in order to work your way through it to a healthier place. However, as difficult and distressing as the work was, I'm so grateful that I did it. Reprocessing memories and events through EMDR helped me gain so much clarity about the events, the people involved in them, and myself. It's crazy to think that I can look back on some of my worst memories without experiencing the same extreme level of distress now that I did back then. I am able to look back at past versions of me with love and understanding and move forward with my life, making sure that I provide for myself all the things that I needed back then, but wasn't getting or didn't know how to give to myself. An aspect of therapy that popped up both in EMDR and my regular sessions was something called parts work, where you identify a part of yourself that gets triggered by something, figure out what they need, and give that to them. For example, my biggest fear, if you boil everything down, is the fear of being alone. I'm afraid of having nobody who loves or supports me, and that I'll have to go through life figuring everything out on my own. One of my upsetting memories was being bullied by some mean girls back in first grade. It's bizarre to me to think that it had such an impact on me, since the bullying I experienced was, in my opinion, mild. During parts work, I relaxed into something like a meditative state and envisioned myself meeting up with little first grade me. I then essentially had a conversation with first grade me and asked what was wrong and what did first grade me need. First grade me was upset about being bullied and feeling alone and needed reassurance that they wouldn't always be alone, so I gave that to them. I reminded them of our wonderful family and friends and promised that they would be taken care of and that I would do what I had to take care of them. Parts work might sound bizarre at first, but if your therapist thinks you might be able to benefit from it, they'll guide you through it your first couple of times until you know exactly what to do. The key to most things in life is simply to be open-minded. I know that I was extremely resistant to the idea of therapy when I was younger because I didn't consider myself to be mentally ill. Really, I just didn't know how bad my problems were, and they only continued to get worse as they festered in my brain over the years. When you approach therapy and learning to face your fears, trauma, anxieties, etc., you need to be open to the experience, open to whatever thoughts and feelings arise, and open to changing the way you think about or process things. There are several other things that I've discussed and dealt with in therapy, but these are the main ones I wanted to discuss in my podcast. In the future, I might add to this list as I either learn more or feel a need to expand on any of my ideas. I truly hope this episode helped you or resonated with you in some way. In the next episode, I'll be discussing medication and how, in combination with therapy, it has helped change my life for the better. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all in the next episode of Level Up My Life. Sending you all the good vibes.